your whole name. How do you pronounce your name?
No, you can call me Tsisana. Tsisana is my first name.
Okay.
And it's a name of Georgian origin, so it even has meaning and translation.
So please tell us, because you normally write the other name first. So that's why I'm not pronouncing it because I might not pronounce it.
Tsisana is the first name. And the last name, my surname is Shamlikashvili.
Okay, so because normally you write the surname first, whenever I've seen your name on LinkedIn and all, that you write it like this.
My family and my friends, and they call me Tsisana. Yes.
Perfect. So you're all right if I call you that. So Tsisana, thank you very much for coming in and doing the show. And of course, your experience as a JAMS fellow, obviously that is what we really talk about. But of course, we'll talk about the work that you're doing. I'm sure you're doing a wonderful work in Russia. So just tell us as much as you want to tell us about yourself, then we'll go into the JAMS part of it. Please.
So thank you very much. First of all, thank you for invitation and for this opportunity. It's a real privilege and honor to talk to you and to your audience. And I hope also that these discussions which you are leading, they will be one of the in good mean of this word, advertisements for mediation and for different approach to conflict resolution. And conflict is, now we see how big is conflict in our lives. Yes.
I know.
So probably today, everything what we are doing through the lens of what we are witnessing. Of course, it's not easy to make any conclusions or to learn from it, but because sometimes such kind of events, they need a deep retrospective view. But even now we can learn from what we are witnessing, because especially we mediators, and for us, probably ability to reflect and necessity to reflect is one of the main features which our profession has. And I started, and now again, through the lens of what is happening now, I'll try to tell you a little bit about my journey toward mediation. So I'm a physician, I'm a neurologist, I have a science degree in neurology. I was working in one of the oldest and most distinguished Moscow medical schools, which is now Academy of Medicine, and in neurology clinic. And I was working on Parkinson's disease, which is very severe and very complicated disease. And afterwards, I became, when perestroika started, and everything was changed in our country. I'm from Soviet Union, from the country which doesn't exist anymore. And probably I'm now again from the country which won't exist anymore, at least in the means which, when I left 1 month ago, Russia, probably now I will find completely different country. So it's how life is, what life is doing with us. So, and afterwards, when perestroika started and the Soviet Union fell apart, which was great for all of us, because we gained back our freedoms. And many of us, we thought that it's forever. And that these freedoms are we could take it as for granted, which was not the case, of course. And at the very end of 90s, so in the beginning of 90s, I left my medical practice because it was impossible. We had just to think about safety of our family and to find a way how we have to operate our lives in the future. So, and at the end of 90s, I realized that, first of all, I have to have legal education. So I went to the law school, and in parallel, I started also psychology because my children, they became teenagers and I had a lot of questions from psychological point of view. So, and finally, in 2000, I had all this bouquet of educations and life experience. And I was very much involved in Russian society, in Russian life. And I saw that we need something which will work for Russian society to be changed. Not that I'm getting back to my what I said about taking democracy and freedom of speech and the rest as granted, which started to diminish in Russian society. And it started to, people didn't pay attention for this anymore because they gained this small, comfort. Each of them got the comfort which they thought that was necessary for them, more or less. I can't say that all Russia. Most of the Russia till today lives in great poverty and in terrible conditions. And I decided that probably mediation could be a tool. And for me, it's very important to explain that for me, mediation wasn't something what I thought that it's necessary only for dispute resolution from legal point of view in legal field. But it was for me something what can help people to change their attitude towards each other, because conflict is a very important part of any society, because we are living in disagreements and contradictions each and every minute. But Russians, they are very famous for this, that it's not that Russians are better or worse, but historically they have this feature. And maybe you heard about very famous Russian writer Gogol, Nikolai Gogol. And he had this story about two persons who had small dispute regarding defense between their small pieces of land. And this small dispute consumed completely all their fortune, all their lives, and it lasted till the end of their life. So this is kind of a very symbolic story which we have in classic. So, and I decided that maybe mediation can be something what can help to change this attitude and to help people, first of all, to find better ways to deal with the conflicts, to respect themselves. First of all, this is self-respect when you are trying to resolve the conflict, not involving somebody from a side, because when there is conflict, it's your conflict. Yes, and please interrupt me. If,
No, I'm perfect. It's perfect. I really want to. I mean, I'm enjoying what you said.
So, and this was my main goal when I started all this. That's why one of the first, and this was also one of main tasks to integrate mediation in school, in educational system. Was to start it from young. I'm not very original in this. Everybody knows that, and there is a lots of projects in peace building and the rest. But you know what? Our project was a little bit different, much deeper, and it's not only about technology and methods to solve the conflict. First of all, you have to have mindset, which helps you, first of all, not to prevent the conflict escalation, and also to solve it, even in case if it occurs. And I had some support in Russian political establishment for this, and we started. And due to my efforts, of course, I involved all possible stakeholders in these discussions, in this work. It's very difficult to imagine how complicated it is to draft and to adopt new legislation regarding completely new field, especially in a country like Russia is. So, but we achieved it, and finally, after lots of difficulties, adventures, and so on, in 2010, mediation law was adopted, and which I don't know if any law can be perfect, especially with the practical field, which was completely new at this time in Russia. It still is new. And but at least what was very important for me, and what we achieved, that it was not a law only for commercial mediation, because many people, they just wanted to have a law which will allow them to settle the cases in commercial field. And also that it was a law which supported more facilitative approach to mediation, because evaluative mediation would kill mediation in Russia, because Russia is corrupted. Russian courts, they are not really independent. And this will be just legalization. If it would be evaluative mediation, it will be just legalization of corrupted ways to settle the cases. So finally, in 2010, we got it. Meanwhile, in 2008, I met Jay Folberg, Jay Welsh, and at one of the conferences, we had a big gathering in Rome, and there I got invitation from them to become JAMS Weinstein Fellow. So at this moment, I already studied mediation, almost in all best schools of mediation in the world. I mean, it was Cedar, it was Harvard, it was some private schools, and one of my best and favorite approaches and teachers are Gary Friedman and Jack Himmelstein, and German School of Mediation. So, and of course, I was very busy, and I was one of the first JAMS Weinstein Fellows, and this was great, idea, first of all, and I'm very thankful to my JAMS friends and to Daniel Weinstein, Judge Danny, who really sponsored all this and made it possible. And I spent in the United States with interruptions several weeks, and I did this journey throughout from west to east, studying mediation in all fields, starting from court mediation programs, community mediation, private mediation centers, and all this. And this was, of course, invaluable experience, which feeds me till today still, because this experience helps you, first of all, to widen your horizons. It was great for networking, and many of my colleagues and friends whom I know from this experience. Of course, I had already a big group of people whom I knew in the United States and all over the world. And now it's great that Weinstein Fellows group grew to several, it's almost 100 people in this group. And this is very nice. And we build it all. I mean, I settled the Center for Mediation and Law in 2005 in Russia as non-governmental organization. And the main goal was first to create all what was necessary, like infrastructure for mediation. Because when you are striving to adopt the law, you have to have also something on what you can rely when the law will be in place. So we tried to build up the professional group of mediators to teach people. We tried, of course, to involve legal society, lawyers, judges. We did a lot to persuade and to explain to judges what is mediation for the society, for themselves to be, excuse me, to be perceived as more neutral and independent, even for the parties who are coming for court procedure, because judge, when he is ready to be open-minded and explain the parties that there is some maybe better for his particular case way to address this dispute, then probably respect to the judge is much higher. Yes, so also I started to publish magazine, Mediation and Law, and Intermediation and Conciliation magazine, because since we started to implement mediation in Russia, for me it was very important to explain to public and especially to professional groups who were influential that mediation it's not conciliation, and that mediation it's not kind of intermediation when someone comes, evaluates your case and says to parties, okay, you should do like this and you should do like this. And yes, then case will be settled maybe, but it's not mediation at all. Because for me, mediation is always a kind of transformation of the attitude of the parties. And in mediation, there is always something, as we say, it's when from two positions, two interests, something new is coming out, which is acceptable for these two sides. But it's something third. We all knew these books and of William Ury and my friend Lila Love and Josh Stalberg even wrote the book, The Third Voice, which is very, very good for beginner mediators also. So.
But Tsisana, that is always, actually, that's always a fine line, this whole evaluative facilitative part of mediation will always be something which will come up in discussion a lot. And of course, my stand on that has always been that because of that, we should not move away from mediation, because there is a lot of confusion created around it. Is this mediation? Is it not mediation? And okay, this is conciliation, which moves away from mediation. And here in India, we have a law which is called conciliation, but it is mediation as I look at it. Because for me today, because all these discussions happen all over the world, today we have the Singapore Convention, which has a definition of mediation. So all I tell people is, just let's look at that, because it's a nice broad definition. Does this process fit into that or not? That's all. Let's do that, because otherwise we'll keep debating it and we'll confuse the user. The user would understand what is happening, because they're not concerned with in the mediation world. We keep discussing all this. The user is looking at dispute resolution, is not wanting to get into technical part. And I just feel if they're comfortable with a person suggesting, let them be comfortable. If they're not comfortable, they'll move out of the process. But let's not confuse them, because for me today, the process is not used as much as we keep discussing it. That's a bit.
Yes, I agree with you, because from one side, I agree with you, but for my particular case, I mean, for Russia, and if you have this task to bring some change in the society, you have to be a little bit more strict with these things. Because if people will get, for instance, conciliation instead of mediation, when they want to run away from the corrupted system, and you allow to be conciliation, it does not matter, some third parties involvement, then they won't embrace mediation anymore. For them, mediation will become the same like they knew already, and which they don't like. But this is another thing, and what I want to tell you, I had this privilege to be for 3 days in Delhi. I was invited for a big forum, and it was some years ago. I didn't want to go to India, to tell you the truth, without good preparation. And I still hope that I will be able to come to India for 4 or 5 weeks, and just to have this more deeper knowledge about India.
Tsisana, first you have to come for 4 or 5 weeks, only travel around India. There's enough to see. Then 4 or 5 weeks to look at mediation. So you have to keep 8 to 10 weeks. That's what you have to do.
Okay, thank you. I'm a traveler, so I would like to come, but it's time. But what I want to say is that I knew about India, I read about India a lot, and I know judges from India who are also on Weinstein Fellow. We met and we discussed all this. And I knew that in India, the legal system is overloaded, and that there are cases which are inherited from generation to generation even. And of course, we had some visits to the courts, and of course, we spoke about how mediation is implemented in India. And I completely agree. When we came to the courts, and when you see this still crowd of people who are waiting for that they will be invited to the mediation room, and they solve these conflicts which they don't want to leave for their children or for their grandchildren. And they can go and live already life without getting rid of these troubles and burden. That's great. I completely agree with this. And that's what I'm thinking sometimes, that we have to look at it from the point of view, what is the main purpose for which we are starting implementing mediation? Probably you know that, for instance, in the United States, mediation was started, first of all, and supported by the federal judges. And JAMS was established by federal judge Warren Knight, because they were unhappy with the system which they worked and so on. And they wanted, first of all, to give good alternative for people, for citizens, to solve the disputes, legal disputes. But for me, I am saying this personally, for me, it was very important to give something, some new approach to Russian people, to help them to build this ability for critical thinking, independent thinking, and independent ability to solve the dispute. This was the reason why I wanted to put this line. But to you, I can tell you in secret that for mediator, the professional mediator, there is no such. Of course, we have code of conduct, and we have our principles, and we have rules. But always we are working in blend model. We are working with the key which opens the door, which will help open the door, which is closed for parties who asked us for support and assistance. So it doesn't mean that I won't. Of course, I'm not happy when parties ask me to give them the advice what could be solution, because they hold this solution, they have this solution, and they have to get and to come to this solution. But most of the time, this is blend model, which has features from different models, from facilitative, sometimes even evaluative, transformative, all these kinds of mediations. So it's like this. And just to make possible, and most of the Russian society, of course, is not fluent in English, doesn't have ability to read in foreign languages, and also lawyers and mediators. And that's why we started to publish a magazine. We started to publish as much as it was possible for me to find the best books which can help them to build up their knowledge in mediation. And we translated more than 20 books from different colleagues from all over the world, and published it in Russian. So we created the library for mediators in Russian language as well. So it was like this. Maybe I will let you ask me questions.
What I would really actually want to know, what was the history of mediation in Russia? Because this is what we talk about as, let's talk about it as modern mediation, what came in 2010 and what you were discussing. But what about history, the czars and that time? What was the situation in terms of mediation at that time?
You know, in ancient times, I mean, in the Middle Ages, there was some Russia, and Russia wasn't the one like country from the beginning, and there was some parts of Russia, and there was Novgorod, for instance, which used to have democracy, kind of democracy, city with a lots of trade and things like this. And they had some, something what can be called as mediation. They also had arbitrage. For instance, in 19th century, most of the trade people, they used kind of arbitration and with features of conciliation, which sometimes we also found in some records the word mediation in Russian books. And then, of course, when, so there was some in culture, there was already some seeds, and it was some kind of experience of this kind of non-formal approach to the dispute resolution. But with the revolution, 1917 revolution, all this was completely lost. And what happened with the legal system, it's very difficult even to imagine, you know. We had courts, there was some lawyers, but people, they didn't have, it wasn't part of the culture to defend your rights. There was no such even understanding of possibility of the rights, private, personal rights, and possibility to protect them. There was no private property, for instance, almost no private property. So when in the beginning of 90s, of course, all this started to get back. So we can't say that Russia or this part of the world, they didn't have any experience with alternatives to the former. But in Russia also, it was always like this, that the Tsar was good, always good, and everybody wanted to apply to him for his judgment, and that his judgment will be. So this why I'm saying this, just to show you that such an independent approach, you know, when it's my dispute, why should I go to someone else? It doesn't matter, is it Tsar or someone else, because I am the expert of my dispute and my situation. But this is a part of the culture, this is part of tradition, just to put responsibility on someone's shoulder. And this was one of my tasks, and I was very realistic. I didn't have any illusions that it can happen in my time, in my lifetime, that this change could be. But if we will be consistent in our efforts, then hopefully in several generations, maybe it could be changed. But now we see that Russia is again far back, unfortunately. And what will happen with Russia now, I don't know.
Well, I think the important thing that we actually need to discuss, of course, is the role of mediators, because the role of mediators in the present situation or otherwise on a larger role of mediators, I think that also, because that I basically have a conference coming up, starts on 18th of May. And the inaugural address is by Ken Cloak, and he is going to be discussing the war in Ukraine, the lessons for mediators. So you must participate in that. I think because we've had earlier discussions also with him on these issues because the larger role of mediators. So what your thoughts on that are, you can obviously tell us what your thoughts on the role of mediators in global problem solving, in social problem solving. Where do you see the larger role of mediators?
What I want to tell you, you know, the main, from this point of view, probably, one of the main roles of mediators is educating people. Maybe it sounds a little bit too idealistic. But at the same time, you know, unfortunately, one of the best teachers is the history. But again, history shows us that we human beings, that we are not able to learn so much from the history. And what we have today, if we would learn better from the history, at least from the Second World War, maybe today we won't be in this position where we are now. And what I could tell to you regarding role of mediators, you know, mediators, what we can do, we are mediators. We are not even on the second or third track if we are talking about kind of diplomacy and involvement of mediators and their skills in such. We don't have so much influence. There is a lot of efforts in last 25 years to build something like new diplomacy, which is really necessary in nowadays, because we see that even without this war which we have now, we saw that the world is changing and changing extremely due to digital technologies, all these. And diplomacy, from the ancient times, diplomacy was always something which used some maybe tools, instruments of mediation, but again in more manipulative way, and not even in pure way, you know. And it depends for what you use something. Yes, you can use the same thing for good or for bad, and it will give a result, a relative result. So today we have to talk more about maybe new kind of diplomacy where still mediators, professional mediators, can be consultants, can be even involved in this. But people who are in diplomacy and who can open these doors, they have to listen. They have to understand that they need something new. They need this change, you know, because they need tools. For instance, with the war which we are witnessing now, if, for instance, in 2000, in the beginning of 2000, because Putin, which we see today, or even which was on 21 of February, or which was in 2014 and 2008, it's all different Putin, you know. And from the beginning, if, for instance, West would listen to him, because they thought, okay, Soviet Union fall apart, Cold War was finished, and that it will never come again back. But this is something, you know, we are now at the moment when someone who was really insulted, he wasn't like adolescent boy. He asked that everybody would acknowledge him, recognize him. We don't know how he would behave even in this case, but in any case, if they would embrace him and say him, okay, I am talking now, of course, metaphorically, okay, you are a good boy, okay, let's tell us, what do you want? Let's find the ways to meet your interests. They didn't listen to him at all. And finally he said, okay, you don't listen to me. Now I'm taking this and I will kill people, I will occupy, I will do all the evil what is possible, which is destroying for him, which is destroying for Russia. And of course, it's what I'm saying all the way since I started mediation, that we are living in the world when you can't harm. In previous times, in ancient times, when there was war between villages or tribes, okay, they harmed each other, they killed each other, but the rest of the world stayed indifferent. It didn't touch, but today it's impossible. When you harm your neighbor, you are harming yourself, for sure. Yep. There is no doubt about it.
Well, the way I look at it is that I think mediators have to now start playing a more active role. Mediators wait for them to be called in situations, and then they'll come in if they are called in. I'm not even saying they're called in, but I think maybe we have to start playing a more active role and find ways to get the dialogue going. However, we have to do. We have to now go to the people, and we have to start the whole awareness about mediation. So I'm looking at it from the grassroots level right now. Let's create that whole culture of mediation. Let's get the people involved, but only thing for me is getting the right people into mediation. So for me, identifying those with the mediator mindset, starting from villages and families and communities, let's start working with them. These people already exist, they know everything about mediation, but for some reason that is not recognized. There is this whole formal concept of mediation which is revolving and rotating around the world, and it seems that that is mediation. But whereas the larger mediation which is happening every day in the world is happening in a very informal setup. So that for it has to be recognized, and in whatever way sensitization and education, whatever has to happen, I'm trying to do it from that end. Because last year what I did was I organized a symposium which was topic was mediation in our culture and traditions. The whole idea
Mhm.
behind the symposium was that people might not know the word mediation, but they're familiar with the process. Let's connect them to that process which they're familiar with. Not try to show them that, look, we have something now and we are coming and giving it to you. And
Yes.
yeah, it's like some rocket science and you should adopt it. I mean, that's not the way it's mediation for me needs to be pushed out. So I'm trying to do it from the reverse. I'm saying identify with the process, find those people with the mediator mindset, use it. And of course, this for me, that whole colonization mindset that dispute resolution happens in courts or in certain, maybe certain parts, when of course in history there was a ruler who has to, you have to go to. So that kind of mindset has to also break, and you have to start looking at dispute resolution can happen in your house, in your community. So courts is not where you go to, at least not in the first instance. In country like India, even the last instance, like you said, it doesn't work. And the whole generation can go through with the dispute and it doesn't get resolved. So that's the kind of way I am trying to put it out.
Yes, and that's great. And I wish you lots of success with this approach. And you heard probably about this conflict, and we had several wars in Chechnya, in Russia. And North Caucasus was always very difficult territory for Russia, starting from emperor's times, from Tsar's times. And when we started mediation, we had several events with people from Chechnya.
Mhm.
And they were so much, they suffered a lot. This war was terrible, and there is lots of very ugly situations regarding war. Is always ugly, but what Russia did from political point of view and violence point of view. But they said, okay, but we also have some tools. And finally, we ended up with trying to study the dispute resolution methods, which these people from this ethnicity, like Chechens, Ingush, Dagestan people, they had from the ancient times. And all of them, they have this kind, I can't say that it's something like mediation. It's something which helps you to conciliate, but you know that they have this vendetta, which goes from generation to generation. And at least these methods helped to stop the vendetta, which is already good. If you can do at least small step towards humanity, towards more civilized way to solve the dispute, then it doesn't matter how you call it. If less people will be suffering and victimized, then it's already a great result. And I completely agree with you. And also, indeed, we don't have to impose, we don't have to import something. We have to listen for the cultural and traditional ways of the places where, for instance, in Kazakhstan, I consulted them quite a lot on their mediation law, and they took a lot from our mediation law. But at the same time, they connected this law with their traditional system. In rural places, they have something called bee courts.
That's a bit of a problem, because bees, as I understand, is actually arbitration. Because this, I had the discussion from,
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. It's arbitration. That's what I'm saying.
This is exactly what the idea behind the symposium was, that let us not connect the whole concept of mediation with, for convenience, something which is happening in traditions, because that will spoil the whole thing. That definitely, yes. This bees actually, for me, actually was a problem, which of course, there was no one from Kazakhstan in that symposium. There were people from 45 countries in that symposium, but Kazakhstan, I had a discussion with someone separately. And this was something which I always, even in India, forget Kazakhstan, in India, there is something called a panchayat. Basically, the village elects 5 people. It's like an administrative, quasi-judicial, you can call it, a body. But in India, people try and say panchayat does mediation. And if you talk to someone in the villager, they will say panchayat gives a decision. So you are already spoiling the whole concept of mediation just for connecting
it
with
I mean.
Yeah, exactly. I understand.
That's what I mean. Yes.
I understand. Yeah, exactly.
Because so sorry, I interrupt.
No, please, after you.
When you don't do this distinction, then you are losing all this precious part of mediation.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree with you. I mean, what I do is, of course, I want to just put out the thought and I want people to take it forward. So I had some teachers from some rural part of India. I had this discussion with them. And of course, someone had obviously spoken to them about mediation and had told them that mediation is what the panchayat does, like I told you. And then I had to explain to them, panchayat gives a decision, mediation is not that. Mediation, I then of course told them about mediation. Then interestingly, names started coming out of people in the village who are actually doing mediation. So once you explain the concept to them, then they relate to those people. And what I want to bring out is those people who are actually doing mediation, and villagers then understood the process based on what those people are doing. So they were being taken to a different direction altogether. So first, I mean, imagine just in 1 hour, this is just in 1 hour, suddenly got them on track, got names out of them also. So this is what I actually want people to go out and talk to people about this aspect, and not let, and I'm telling you, this panchayat thing, even our Supreme Court has a training manual, a part of that. First of all, I have this issue with courts getting into mediation. That's a different thing. If you start me off on that, that is another whole discussion. I just don't think that they should be, but they have a training manual which goes out, and of course mediators are being trained, and that also I have a problem with, which I'll discuss with you. So there in that training manual, they talk connecting with panchayat. Now, definitely, if you go out and say that to people, how would they think is any different? How would they say that, okay, if I go to court or I go to the panchayat, they make it taking a decision for me? So how do you be able to bring the whole process out? So this is really one issue that, for convenience, I think it's just for convenience. We just want to put something out, some analogy. Let's not do that. Let's, at least, if there is no analogy available, don't use it. Don't try to do it for convenience. So this, like bees and panchayat, is a definitely an issue which we have to address, because obviously we want to promote mediation and not let people just talk about it as, okay, another decision, someone else will come into the picture. But I'm still interested to understand from you, what do you understand by conciliation? Because you've been saying that. What is conciliation according to you?
Conciliation is something where, first of all, it's always compromise, very, very it's already strive for compromise, and you have to be prepared that you will give up for much of what you need. It could be still something which with what you still can live, but it's a big compromise. This is first. And for me, we can say that in mediation, we also have, we are striving for consensus, but consensus sometimes it's very ideal and it's not possible to achieve. But when you get to compromise in mediation, you at least understand. First of all, you allow yourself to settle on compromise, which is understood by you and which you see as, and when you know that this is better and it's balanced for you. And also what is one of the main things, it's a role of the third party, if we are saying about mediator or any other settlement judge or something. Conciliation is where the third party doesn't open the avenue for the parties to understand their situation, to understand each other. But mostly in conciliation, there is a person who just evaluates this case and sees the solution, which he thinks from his point of view or based on legal situation, based on the law. And he says, okay, this is, or he gives you judgment, or if it's a judge, he just gives you as a verdict. And that one side has to do this and another side. So this is kind of imposing in any case. Even if in conciliation, both sides, they say, okay, this is a good idea. Let's do the way like you say. It does not mean that this solution, this agreement will be feasible and will be long-lasting.
Why I mentioned the definition, the Singapore Convention, because look, how people use it in various jurisdictions, the word conciliation, it depends on if there is a law on it, what their law says. So there is, of course, specifics to various countries. But when we go about and say that mediation and conciliation are different, then what we have opened out to, like I said, confusion in the user's mind, which they also don't understand. For them, it's not something that they even know about. So that's why the Singapore Convention, I found that definition really, really nice, because it's very broad. This is what the definition is. So as a process, irrespective of the expression used, call it conciliation, call it mediation, call it, like I said, Tsisana method or Vikram method. How does it matter? Call it whatever you want. We don't care. The other thing, how the process is carried out, be it facilitative, evaluative, transformative, narrative, your wish. You do how you do the process, whereby parties attempt to reach an amicable settlement of the dispute with the assistance of a third person or persons lacking the authority to impose a solution. This is what we have to tell people, that the person doesn't have the authority to impose a decision for you, a solution upon you, nothing like that. So I think this is the only little education that is required to tell people. And once we do this, after that, otherwise, I'll tell you where the issue lies. If you tell people that no, there is a concept of facilitative, in some places they have this issue that the person should not even suggest. Okay, they have these issues somewhere. Now, in that kind of an environment, which is a totally confidential process happening within people, if tomorrow someone has to challenge a settlement agreement, all it has to go and say, though, this is what the mediator suggested. And mediator is not supposed to suggest, so we will go out of a settlement agreement. I mean, you're opening out avenues for people when it's not required. As long as the end of the day, did the person impose a solution on you? No. Then why are you, then there is no issue that if a person suggested, they just suggested, that's it. Leave it at that. That's the way I look at it, because I'm telling you, finally we have to get the user to come in and use the process rather than us on an academic basis, debating this whole thing and not have the process being used by people. Because I'm telling you, in India, I say that we have the best law on mediation. And in this country, you will talk to people and they say, we have no law on mediation. There is a bill lying in parliament. And when that bill is passed, then we'll have a law on mediation. So all I ask them is, have a look at this definition, because India has signed the Singapore Convention. So, and we have no other definition of mediation in any law. So the only way is for interpretation of any statute or in general in law, we go for some definition which we have in a convention, which is what we've signed. And in principle, we've accepted that definition. So does our law on conciliation fit into that definition? Yes. Then why do you say that you don't have a law on mediation? Because you're confusing the user. The user thinks that we have to wait for something while we have such a good law that at the end of the day, a person sitting in a village in India can get a court decree, doesn't have to go to the courts, has nothing to do with the government. It is their process. They do it the way they want. They appoint the person they want. And it all happens within their own self-determination, as we want to call it. Why are we confusing them is my issue, because like you can imagine how large our country is, some 1.3 billion people, and you can understand how many disputes are there. Here, if we even think about saying there's a qualification for mediators, we finished off mediation. Because when we have millions and millions of matters, who is going to train people? And first of all, can you train people? My issue with that is that training means you're going to put a skill in them. Can you put this skill into someone? Mediation is not as simple as you are going to go 40-hour factory will make a mediator. So for that, I think last week, there was a the symposium that organized, which was heart, soul, spirituality, and mediation. I say that is an important element of mediation. Have you even talked about it in whatever training that you create? Can you create it in someone? Can you create that aspect in someone? So that's why I say because I'm saying once I go in that direction, I have so much to put out there. But what I'm trying to tell you is that we got a law on conciliation at a time when we picked up in 1996. At that point of time, UNCITRAL was using the word conciliation. So we just picked up their model law and we came out with our law, and we're very nice. Now, UNCITRAL has clarified in their model law, what they've taken out, which was in 2018. They very nicely clarified this aspect. But still confusion people keep creating. Just have a look at this. They've said this. For the purpose of this law, mediation means a process, whether referred to by the expression mediation, conciliation, or an expression of similar import, whereby parties request a third person or persons, the mediator, to assist them in their attempt to reach an amicable settlement of the dispute arising out of or relating to a contractual or the legal relationship. The mediator does not have the authority to impose upon the parties a solution to the dispute. That's all that is required to be put out. And here we are still saying, no, conciliation is something else. We have a law on conciliation, which is what is clarified today, that law is mediation. It is a law on mediation. Only thing is the word used there is conciliation. Now, if you see this footnote number 2, we're very nicely clarified in the footnote also. In its previously adopted texts and relevant documents, UNCITRAL used the term conciliation with the understanding that the terms conciliation and mediation were interchangeable. In preparing this model law, the Commission decided to use the term mediation instead, in an effort to adapt to the actual and practical use of the terms, and with the expectation that this change will facilitate the promotion and heighten the visibility of the model law. This change in terminology does not have any substantive or conceptual implications. So nicely everything has been explained, but still this whole difference of mediation, conciliation, which is discussed in the world, just creates confusion. And at the end of the day, people don't use the process, and there are vested interests who do not want the process to be used. Lawyers in this country have been going out and saying there is no law on mediation. How are you going to even suggest to your clients, which you're supposed to do, that look, there is such a nice law on conciliation, try using it, and at the end of the day you get a court decree? Why don't you and that too, I'm saying sitting in a village somewhere, you can do that. Why not tell them about that, instead telling them there is no law? So I'm saying that because look, one is the academic discussion in certain quarters, And based on certain law, maybe in some countries, I mean, every country will be, of course, will have its own way of going about it. But on a general basis, when it is discussed, I think there is still too much confusion being created around mediation. And also, like I said, there is this whole concept that we have to tell the parties what is best for you. We will tell you what process is best for you. No, they are smart, they're intelligent. They will not stay in a process which they're not comfortable with. They'll move out of it. There is total flexibility with them. If they don't even like the mediator, they will move out of it. If there's no trust in the mediator, they'll move out of it. We keep saying we'll create some standards for the mediators and everything. Why? The parties have the best standard. They are the gauge. This is, again, let me tell you, I think this is still the colonization mindset. We know the best for you. You don't know the best for yourself. Like you said earlier, this is their dispute. They understand the dispute better than anyone else. How they have to resolve it, they understand it the best. But the conditioning of the mind over hundreds of years of colonization, courts, lawyers, they're the ones we go to. So that is the kind of, in August, I have a symposium coming up on colonization, decolonization, and mediation. So we'll discuss these aspects from every country. Yeah, please.
No, we don't have so much time left, but I will tell you just very briefly, responding to what you said, why we at all need the laws about this, because we need some instruments for enforcement, first of all, which makes it more solid. This is one thing, and enforcement is very important. Even first of all for the future, and also it's to persuade the parties, to give them more argument to go not to the court, but to this informal so-called situation. You probably remember the Frank Zander's speech on multi-door courthouse. And you know what? It would be much easier to tell people, okay, we have this, but first of all, it's a game. Everywhere we have different situations. We have different cultural background, traditions. For instance, if in United States, I'm just speculating now. If in United States you will have courthouse, and there was still some court annexed programs where it worked more or less in this way. But you say, okay, this is a courthouse, and here you have legislation, just traditional legislation, and here you have settlement conference, here there is conciliation, there is mediation, and you can choose. Or you can say, okay, the rest of this is legislation, and the rest, there is settlement conference where there is adjudication still, but more lighter process, and the rest you have process assisted by professional, but he does not have any power to suggest, to impose. But anyway, each of these decisions will have enforceability, will have power. So it would work. It could work, but in this particular culture, which I assume it could be. For instance, if you would do it in Russia, in each of these rooms would be sitting people who will be saying, okay, you pay so much, and the decision will be taken in your favor. And he will be helping, maybe I'm saying it on a very primitive way, but it's how it works,
I'll tell you, Tsisana, I'll tell you very interestingly, there was an interview of a mediator who was in our Supreme Court, and that mediator, all the training, everything has been done. And still in that interview says that the mediator will decide. And you can, exactly what you are saying, that in that room, forget the legislation, don't even require that, forget the legislation, in that room, what is the person doing? Is the person with that, look, you can imagine a lawyer coming in with their gown and everything, and the atmosphere created, and someone coming from, I'm not, for example, coming from a village. For them, coming to the Supreme Court is a big thing. And then a lawyer walks in that kind of thing, and then says that I will decide for you. That is misuse of the process. So there will be people who will misuse the process. That is why we need to educate people that this person does not have the authority to impose the solution. Suggesting, if we get into the finer lines of suggesting or not suggesting, then we will actually create that whole environment where people are always going to be looking for something. No, this is suggestion, this is not suggestion, is this? So I'm saying that whole pure facilitative concept, where does it, if the people don't want evaluative concept or not even suggesting, they will themselves decide that, and the facilitative mediators will be the ones they'll go to. But that kind of thing is not even happening in the US. I'll get to that part. I mean, definitely, because I was just wanting to tell you that this law on conciliation, I would like you to have a look at it, because it is so simple. They decide who the mediator is. And you said why the law is required. Exactly, whatever the law is required for, that law has. Confidentiality is protected, without prejudice is protected, mediator not called as a witness protected, enforcement as a court decree available. I'm saying this is what you need in a law. That's it. Don't go beyond that, because once you legislate anything beyond that, you are now in a way getting into something that what the parties are best to decide. You have to get out of this colonizer mindset. No, they know best. So up till what you are supposed to give them up to that. Don't go beyond that. That's the way I look at it. But on the multi-door court house, I tell you where my problem with that is. Here we keep talking about, yes, we must promote mediation, and very nice, and multi-door courthouses have been opened. Like in Nigeria, you have multi-door courthouses. In the whole bargain, the mediator is getting the worst deal. Mediator is left out of it. What happens is, mediator gets something like in Nigeria, will be for the whole mediation will get $40. So in that, if you have a multi-door courthouse, you have arbitration, litigation, and mediation options. And you say the mediator will get $40, arbitrator can charge what they want, litigating lawyers can charge what they want, but we will control this. How will you even be able to develop mediators? And without mediators, how does mediation happen? I don't know how it happens. So don't finish off the mediators. I'm telling you, worldwide, the mediator is not valued the way they are, only because of this reason, because in the court process, they get nothing. And we are living in a society where money determines whom you respect and value. There was a mediator, senior mediator from Nigeria in one of my shows, and he said, look, I walk into the courthouse as a mediator. I am looked at because of the fact, how much money you get. The parties say, oh, this guy gets as much as my clerk. They look at him from that angle. And he says, here the litigating lawyer is coming in that wig and the robe and everything. So there is respect and value of that. So multi-door courthouses, of course, talk about it, but then uniform, either uniform, everyone gets $40. The courthouse will be closed down by the lawyers in one day. They will finish it off. Or if they can, whoever can charge what they want. I think the difference, what has happened is, there is, of course, courts have this problem that we can't push them into mediation, because we are supposed to do our job. We've been under the constitution recognized for something, and we are not doing our job. We are very inefficient, and we are denying justice, because justice delayed is justice denied. So we want to, whatever our workload is, we want to reduce it. So we should promote mediation. But if we tell parties to pay whatever the market rates are, parties will question us. How can you force us to go there? The court's house have been made under constitution. You have to deliver justice. So they will face a problem. So give them an option, for give it free. And that is where I have a problem with. There is a difference between free and pro bono. If a person can't afford it, create a situation there is legal aid. Before litigation also, there is legal aid. So do that. But when a person can afford it and you're giving it free, you are devaluing mediation and you're devaluing mediators. And that is where it is, according to me, that's why it doesn't take off. One, I said, identify the right people. That's the people with the mediator mindset. We have to bring them out from villages, communities, families, and don't devalue mediation and mediators with the court system the way it's happening. And this is a global issue. It is not based on any country. Everywhere in the world, this is the problem. So this is what I'm trying to fight against in whatever way I can.
Yes, this is a big problem. You know what? This is very, but it's human's nature again. The problem is that mediation in nowadays should be primary task for the world. Because if we will kill each other, no, courts won't be necessary, nothing will be necessary. But at the same time, it's seen as something secondary. That's why we have this, paradoxical situation, first of all. Also, it's very often people, when they are in mediation, and that when you have, for instance, translators helping you, as less you feel this translator and see him, it's better professional he is. It's more or less the same regarding mediator, because he facilitates this dialogue between parties, having as less as possible stake in all means of this work, in this dialogue. And some people think, okay, what did he do? He was just sitting, saying something from time to time, and that's all. Why should I pay for this? And this is very often, and this policy towards mediators helps to support this mindset, this attitude towards mediators from the potential parties. But you and me, we know that mediators, they know that mediators have to, it's even more complicated. I don't say it because I'm a mediator, but human's nature is like this, that we are coming always from our own experience, our own values, and we think that we know better. We always want to give an advice. It's a human nature, and mediator has to kill this, intention to give an advice. He has to forget about himself. He has to become completely empty and help these people to fill him in and to give him an opportunity to give birth for something new. And this is very complicated, but it's very difficult, and it's very difficult to teach. It's not like this. When we trained our mediators, my main thing, what I was saying to them, first you have to understand what is the mediation philosophy, what is the mindset of mediator. All these techniques and tools, this you can learn. This is something what you can learn. But first you have to understand where is this your role and what you may and what you may not do. So this is probably big problem and question. And I agree that mediators, they are not appreciated. And all these discussions regarding free mediation, regarding pro bono, and even people, policymakers, they don't understand what is the difference between pro bono and free, and that it has to be also in right way presented to the parties. Because when parties, they get something for free, they don't appreciate it so much, they don't value it. So it's like this.
But before I go any further, let me just, there's a comment from Elizabeth. She's in Brno in Russia. And she puts a comment saying, of course, she's thanking me. Vikram, thank you so much for this session. Thanks, Tsisana, for sharing your vision of mediation development through years. Large part of mediators in Russia started their work just in last year. Tsisana's experience is really important because they're doing some good work in Brno. Of course, Brno is very far away from where you are. So
no, we know them all.
Yeah, so they're doing a good thing, and that's what the interesting thing is, that in every corner there are people who are enthusiastic, who are passionate, they're trying their best. But whatever issues that are there, we have to find ways to get over them, so that these people who are passionate can actually do this on a full-time basis, and not be something that they are doing because they enjoy it so much, but they have to look at livelihood from something else. So that's my focus area, because that's also a problem everywhere.
Can I just say one thing? First of all, people in Russia, many of them, they made such an effort and such an investment. There is very few mediators, full-time mediators all around the world. It's
Exactly.
not only. And in Russia, you can't live from mediation. You can't survive from mediation. But many of people from regions of Russia, they started to do it. Some of them, they started because it became fashionable, which is not good. And when it's trendy, you are saying that you are doing mediator, hoping that this gives you some new ways to gain more money or something, which is not the case in reality.
Yep.
And the main thing is that everyone who makes this effort in sincere way really understand. They have to understand the substance of mediation. And what we spoke about the second part of our conversation today, that the main thing is the understanding of the role of mediator and its impact, its influence on the quality of the decisions which parties get. This is very important, that mediator has to understand this difference, not because I like to distinguish mediation from arbitration or from conciliation or intermediation. No, but because it gives a more clear understanding of what process we are using, what parties have to expect from this process, and especially when you are working with uneducated parties who only know legislation, and maybe also they know about corrupted ways to solve the problems. You have to show them something completely new, in sincere, natural, very, very professional way, to show them that the next time they will know that it exists, such kind of process exists, and there are professionals who can really lead such process, who can help and assist in such process. This is very important, and I want to say to Russian mediators, if there are, and you said there is someone from Barnaul, and to all of them, I wish them success, but first, the most important thing is to understand what is the core of mediation.
But one thing, Tsisana, I'm definitely going to move you away from is the word training, because I am saying let's call it skill development, because these people have a skill development. They have a skill, we need to develop that skill. And training means we'll put a skill in you, and skill development.
Yes, and what word
and not use training and use skill development, because training puts training.
What are you screening?
Training. When we say we
training.
can training.
Training.
Yeah. So
skill development. Yes, that's great.
Because I'm trying to do that everywhere, because I'm saying that if we say that we can train you and we can put a skill in you, I think we are demeaning mediators, because there's a skill that they have, and we are developing that skill. Yes. And because of that, there's a series that I started, was Evolution of a Mediator, that mediators are not made in 40-hour factories. What they go through, their childhood, the value system they are brought up in, and this whole heart, soul, spirituality, and a lot of those factors. So with Danny Weinstein has been on that There've been 2 episodes with him. Third one is coming out next Saturday, not this Saturday, the next one. So of course, I mean, those are that we have to see the person and the person evolving, rather than put it out so easily that, okay, come to this factory and we'll make you a mediator. I have a problem with that. You don't make mediators. I mean, like that. That's my stand.
You can't make mediators. That's what I said to you before. The first is philosophy and mindset, and skills and techniques you can learn. But this you have to embrace and you have to immerse in it. That's very important. And regarding spirituality, I just want to tell you, at the very beginning, when I started my mediation practice with Gary Friedman and Jack Himmelstein, we had even complete week somewhere in Mexico, meditation about mediation.
Okay.
So
Okay, but the only thing is before, I mean, I know you have short of time, so let me just tell you about this conference, which is starting on 18th May, because you have to be part of that. So basically what I did was I put out something called Mediation Vision 2026, and 26 because Ken Cloke's birth, he'll be 85 in 2026, and I am celebrating 18th May because that's his birthday as World Mediators Day. And this conference starts on that day. So he'll be, like I told you, he'll be on his inaugural address, talk about the war in Ukraine and the lessons for mediators. That's one part. But then we'll have sessions throughout May and June. So I've put out certain points on my website as to these broad points for discussion. So people can pick up topics under that. So I will, of course, ask you to go through those points, and whatever particular topic that you want to come up with under that, you let me know, because interesting topics are coming up, because I've put out a broad point of diversity, equity, inclusion. So that's a broad point. So one person came out with the topic neurodiversity and mediation. So very specific. So this kind of thing, let's start discussing more interesting aspects of mediation. So I'll definitely, I mean, if you go to mediatorvikram.com, you'll find a section on Mediation Vision 2026. But if you have 2 minutes, I'll take you through that. I'll just show you the points, and then
if you can send me a link, it will be much easier.
I'll send you the link.
Please send me a link.
Yeah, and that's mediatorvikram.com. I'll send you this link, and just go to this section. So in this section, you'll find various topics for discussion. And so you'll find these topics, and any one of them you want to have a subtopic in that. So we can discuss a subtopic, like in heart, soul, spirituality. This was a separate session I had on Mahatma Gandhi and mediation. So, I mean, just that humanistic approach to mediation. So that was something. So, and I mean, this is now, I mean, I have already had a discussion on women and mediation. So there's lots of topics here. Anything, I mean, or you can add to the topics. I'm not saying this is the final kind of topics that we have to discuss. Anything else?
That's great that you have such a flexibility.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for this conversation, and I hope that I met what you had as goal.
But only thing is, we did not discuss too much about the fellowship, which of course we were supposed to discuss. So that's one left out. That got left out. That's all.
Maybe in future.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So thank you very much. And I'll see you in part of the conference, and I'll send you this link, and please let us have some interesting discussions on mediation.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
You too.
All
Thank you.
The best to you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye. Thank you.